coordinator's name, thank you. That service coordinator's name is going to populate in a drop-down, which will allow me not to have to sit and re-enter that service coordinator's name. So once that information is entered one time, typically we don't have to enter it again. Also, another example is once we enter a child's address, if that child's address is the same as the family's address, we won't have to enter that again. We can simply select from a drop-down that it's the same address. That address will also show when we are assigning services and looking at locations. That address will be seen in billing and claiming. So all of these different modules, case management, service logging, and billing and claiming, they all work together. And that is why you will see a little bit of difference in our navigation and how we do things within EI Hub. One of the other things that's important to remember is that we conduct our training sessions in what we refer to as a training environment. None of the data that you see within the training environment is real data. So basically, the names have been changed to protect. Also, when new systems are developed, there are multiple environments being used. The environment we refer to as the production environment, that's the finished product. That's the environment that you will see when the system goes live. That's the finished product. The training environment, the one that we're going to see today, the one that we're going to be using in in-person trainings and virtual trainings, the one that you'll be able to go into and practice is probably the least developed environment. Its primary purpose is to provide users an opportunity to practice tasks. Some of the items that you see in the training environment will not be seen in the production environment. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a few minutes when I give you that sneak peek. So with all of that said, we're going to start with our PowerPoint, and I'm going to review some of the navigation tricks of EI Hub, and then we will actually go into the system. The reason I'm going to show you this information first before we go into the system is that I'm a big believer that the more times you hear this information, the more times you see this information, the more times we present it to you in in-person trainings, in virtual trainings, the more exposure you have to hearing things multiple times, the more it will help you when the system goes live to be successful. So once you log into EI Hub, the very first thing you're going to see is what we call the landing page. It's basically where you land when you go into the system. And you can see in this particular slide, there's information here on the landing page. We have EI Hub alerts. We have system news, where you would see something to the fact that maybe we're going to shut down the system over the weekend to do some scheduled maintenance. And if we were going to do that, we would provide you that information in advance here on the landing page. Also, arrows 3 and 4, where you see the blue ribbon, is where administrators will add user profiles and assign user roles with user management. Also, in the landing page is where you will see all of the different modules that have been assigned to you personally. Your landing page is just that, it's yours. You will see over here on the far right that this individual has the case management module that's been assigned to them, as well as the billing module. If the service logging module was assigned to that person, you would also see that here in the box. So let's talk a little bit about what these different modules are. The case management module. Would anyone like to put in the chat what they think that module might be? What a good definition of the case management module might be? Family Service Coordination, IFSP, exactly. You are exactly right. That case management module is basically that great big filing cabinet that houses all of the records for all of the children receiving early intervention services across the state of Kansas. So that's where we go to go into your caseload, your children's records, the case management module. Now, if I had been assigned the service logging module, what do you think a good definition of that would be? What do you think we would use the service logging module for? Daily notes, visit contact documentation, when visits occur and meetings, absolutely. All of those services that are billable and non-billable is what you will put into the service logging module, which means that as a service coordinator, more than likely when you come to your landing page, you're going to see the case management module as well as a service logging module here. Now, we have one more module. It's a billing module. What do you think that module will be used for? Billing visits. I mean, that's the short and sweet of it. You are absolutely right. So, as a service coordinator, it might not be your responsibility to actually bill Medicaid for visits, but I'm certain there's someone at your point of entry office that is their responsibility. And when they log into EI Hub and they go to their landing page, they will see that billing module. So, as a service coordinator, you may or may not see all three of these particular modules. It will depend on what your program administrator has assigned to you for the work that you do for the point of entry office. So once I select, let me go back a little bit. So to actually get into a particular module from your landing page, when you hover your mouse over the case management module like I'm doing here, that arrow will turn to the little hand and you will be able to select and click on case management. And when you do that, it will take you to another page within your landing page where you will see all of the user roles that have been assigned to you. So for instance, this person has a super user role, which is basically for PCG or the state at this point. I have a service coordinator role that's been assigned to me, as well as a program admin role. And depending upon the work that I was going to do, I would select by clicking on one of those user roles the role that I wanted to go into the system to do my work. So if I'm going in as a service coordinator because I need to work on an IFSP, I would simply select that service coordinator role. And when I click on that, it will take me to my homepage. Your homepage is busy. Your homepage has lots and lots and lots of information. There's lots and lots of different things you can do from your homepage. One of the first things that you can do is maybe I change my mind. And once I'm in here, I want to do some work as the program administrator. I don't want to have to go all the way back out to my landing page. So how can I change my user role? Here at the top, you will have a drop-down menu, and when you select that, you will see all of your user roles, and that will allow you to move in and out of those different roles easily. Our number 2 arrow over here, this is a menu. And basically, we use the child menu that you see here. Once we select that, we have the option to look up children or add new referrals, as well as utilize some of the reporting capabilities within the system and generate child reports if we need those. Our number 3 arrow here gives you all of your dashboards. And we have different types of dashboards. We have dashboards that are informational, and we have dashboards that are alert dashboards. For instance, children with a birth date, let's see exactly how it's worded, children with 3 to 9 months before their 3rd birthday. If I select that, that gives me all the children on my caseload that are basically ready for that transition planning conference meeting. It's an informational dashboard. However, further down, I see IFSP alerts. That dashboard is what we call an alert dashboard. What are some of the things that you think you might be able to see if you're a service coordinator and you selected that IFSP alert dashboard? What are some things that would be very helpful to know about children on your caseload in terms of their IFSP? Expiring at IFSPs, due dates for annuals and 6-month reviews. Exactly. When services are expiring, due dates, okay? What about those initial IFSPs, that 45-day timeline? Is that important? Yes. So as a service coordinator, that IFSP alert, it's an alert dashboard, and you can use that to track when children are due for their initial IFSP, that 45-day timeline. And you can see IFSPs that are about to expire or IFSPs that are beyond the due date. So it is what we call an alert dashboard. And we will talk about these more in in-person trainings, but these dashboards certainly help you as you're doing your daily task. Our number 4 arrow here, this is what we call a grid in the system. And all of our grids have different types of information with them. So if I actually selected children assigned to caseload, all of the children that I work with would appear here in this grid, and the information that had been entered for that child, if it had been entered, would also show up in these individual columns. I can change the view of this grid here. There's a drop down. I can look at 10 kids, 25 kids, 50 kids, or 100 kids. I can change the view of this grid by simply selecting this little arrow here with the 10. Also, you see there is an Excel button so that if you wanted to, you could export all the information about your caseload to an Excel document. Then last but not least, I'm in case management, but now I need to go log a service. How am I going to get back to my landing page where I can select my service logging module? Here you have this Kansas logo for your early intervention system in Kansas. And when you hover over that logo and select it, it will take you back to your landing page where you can move in and out of the different modules that have been assigned to you for your user role. So basically, thinking about children assigned to your caseload, think about that particular dashboard being the filing cabinet that houses all of the files for the children that you work with, either as a service coordinator or if you're a program administrator, all of the children in your point of entry would be there.
Renee, there was a couple
Yes.
of questions before you move on. Would you like to take
Okay.
those?
Sure.
So they were a lot of excitement about being able to track dates um, in the alerts.
Dashboards.
Yeah, in
Yes.
the
Mm-hmm.
dashboards. So
Mm-hmm.
can they track their transition dates as well? The child is
Yes.
approaching to, yeah.
Yes. There is a transition dashboard for service coordinators as well.
And then another question about are they able to track the services being delivered? So if they said they were going to give a family 15 services, is there a way to track how many have been actually provided at this time, at any time?
That's a very good question. Um, Let me think about that and how you would do that. And that's something we'll cover in our in-person trainings a little bit more. We're not going to have time to get into what all the dashboards do today, or we
Okay.
never would make it to the system and actually giving you your sneak peek. So keep these questions coming. And there are some team members from PCG on this call that I have, and they're going to help me keep up with all these questions and make sure that we address these things when we do those in person trainings as well as the virtual trainings. I want you to keep asking the questions, and we will try to answer as many of them as we possibly can today. But sometimes, I'll just be honest with you, I can talk about early intervention all day long, and you might ask me a question, and 30 minutes later, I might still be talking about it, and then we wouldn't get finished with our training. So I'm going to try to stay on task as much as possible, but keep the questions coming, and we will keep a record of those for our future trainings. You also have the option to change the information that is here in a particular grid. When you see this little gear, you can select that. It will always show the default report, but if you want to change a report and have it be maybe Renee's caseload, and on Renee's caseload, I don't care about the service coordinator's first name and last name and the service coordinator type. I know that information, so I might want to just get rid of that. And when I see when I select this default report, click on Renee's report, and it only have the information that I want to see. And you can move around information by clicking on the title of a particular column. And if you want it in your report, select the green box here, and it will add it to your report. I can put in the child's date of birth. It's not important for me to know the county because I know what county my children are. I might want their first name and their last name. I might want their referral date. Then once I get everything over here and have it the way I want, I might look back at it and go, you know what? I don't really need that. So I can select it, hit the red box, and it will move it back over here. Then I can save that report by adding it here with a new name that says Renee's report. And we'll go into more of that when we do in-person trainings, but that is one of the features in the system. There is also a search box here, and maybe I'm a program administrator and I only want to see one child's record, or maybe I'm a case service coordinator and I have 20 kids on my caseload, and I want to quickly look at Tommy Travis's file. So I can enter his first name, Tommy, and the system will search my caseload and pull up that child's record individually here into the grid. So I've got the child's record there. I've got the hanging file, but how do I open that hanging file up and see what's in there? How do I see that child's referral? How do I add a child's referral? How do I get into that child's record? We have an action column with an edit box. When I select that edit box, voila, it takes me into that child's record. And within that child's record, just like that old-timey hanging file record that we all have on children, there are individual files. And those individual files are child at a glance, child info, family info, funding services, sources, evaluation tab, eligibility, child and family outcomes, IFSP, services, transition, transfer, exit and close, and document. Now, the document tab might be something that's a little bit different, might not be something that you had in your previous system, I'm not sure. But in our system, I can upload documents into this child's record. That referral that comes in on a fax, I can scan it to my computer and then upload it into this child's record. The evaluation report, I can scan it or save it on my computer and upload it into this child's record. And that way, everyone on the team that's working with this child would have access then to look at that actual report. So in thinking about these tabs, these different file folders that are within a child's record, if you are going to be entering or viewing the name of this child's mother, what tab do you think you would select to find that information? Family info, family info. One more person says family info, and we're done. You don't need me. You've got it all figured out. Okay, you are exactly right. Family information is where we would have exactly that. Family information, that child's mother would be entered or be able to be viewed from that particular tab. Now, if you were going to enter or view that child's insurance information, what tab do you think you would select? Funding sources, funding, yes, funding. Perfect. See, you already have this system completely figured out. You are well on your way. You already know more than you thought you knew. So, just a little tip, think of these tabs as those individual folders within a hard copy file. And then within each of those little folders, there's more information about the child's information, the family information, the funding sources, and so on and so on. Now, once I select one of those tabs, once I pull out that little file out of the hanging file, what's going to be in there? Well, when we select that tab, it's going to open up what we call a panel. And everything that you see here in this panel is what can be entered or viewed within child information. So within the child information tab, we have our basic demographic information, our referral, the child address. If that child has a secondary language, we can add that here. Child attributes, which is one of my favorite panels and we'll talk about later, and that service coordinator. A lot of people want to know, why can't we just enter all of this information on one page, on one screen? And that's my question down here. And I'm going to give you the answer for this one. And we've already talked about this a little bit, but I want you to hear it multiple times. When I enter information, for instance, the child address, that is something that is needed in the billing and claiming module in order for billing to be successful. In order for this system to run at optimum speed, which we want it to do, we don't want you having to sit and wait for pages to load and have to sit and wait and wait and wait. We want it to run pretty quickly. So in order for billing and claiming to quickly find a child's address, it's much easier for that to happen if we have that child address in its own little specific area. And billing and claiming only has to come here to look for the child address versus having to go through all of the basic demographic information, the referral, and all of these different panels to find that information. Also, it helps us store historical data more easily. And you'll see that when I show you the referral grid here in just a second. The other thing is when you're entering information into one of the panels, you'll see that there's lots of different fields here that can be completed. And it's like, oh, wow. Well, what if I don't have that information? Only the panels or only the fields where there is an asterisk do you have to enter information. If you do not have the information where there is an asterisk, you will not be able to submit this information. And you'll see this better when I go into the system and demonstrate in a minute. But also, when you're submitting the information, if you did not enter the child's date of birth, it's not going to wipe out everything. It's just going to give you a little message. Child's date of birth is required. You'll go back, enter that date of birth, select submit again, and that particular panel will save. Some of the things you're going to have the information, and it's strictly up to you if you want to enter that information. For instance, if you have a child that was born at 28 weeks gestation and you have that information, you can enter that. But the reason it's not required is because not every child is born premature. So if you have the information, it's always best practice to enter as much as you have. But the things that have an asterisk are the things that are required.
Oh, it's the new system, like all the information for the FSC, personal information and all that stuff. I mean,
I'm sorry.
yeah, that's kind of like what you guys do. And this is what they're showing right now. You can go in there and check.
Yeah,
You guys are not doing it?
I think you need to mute.
Well, I thought she told us to do that. I mean, us. I don't know about you guys, but
You guys have your hours you have to have.
yeah,
Yeah,
we already.
I think we have some folks that I think we have some
Yeah.
folks that are in a room together and having some really good conversation. But if you could mute, it would
What?
really help us out. Okay. All right. So within our child information tab, we also have our referral. And once we've entered our basic demographic information and submitted that, we can enter the referral. So I'm going to go back just a little bit. When you enter the basic demographic information and select submit, the reason this is required before you enter the referral is because this is when the system kind of does this little, and it's looking all across the state at all of the records that are active and exited that might be a match with this child's demographic information. So if I enter a child's name and maybe a birth date that are the same as another child in the state, you're going to get a pop-up that tells you, hey, there's like a 63% chance that this child over in Hoxie, Kansas is the same kid as this one. Do you want to cancel entering this referral, or do you want to continue? You will also have an option to request a transfer. Now, this is where I'm going to beg you to think long and hard before you select continue. And I will put bags of chocolate candy on the tables when I come to do in-person trainings. If you promise me, you will think long and hard before you select continue. Because if you do continue, and if that child's record is the same as the child over in that other point of entry, then you're going to have to call the state office and they're going to have to merge your record with the other one that's in that other point of entry. Now, I don't know how things work in Kansas, but I do know how things work in Tennessee. And in Tennessee, I probably would have rather someone shoot off my little toe than have to call the state office and ask them to do something like that. It just wasn't a pleasant thing to do. So think long and hard before you run the risk of entering a duplicate record. So that's my little spiel for the day on that. So your referral grid, as I mentioned, we have the capability to store historical information. We are never in a million years going to delete referral information. We're never going to delete a child's address. We're never going to delete a service coordination assignment. This system is going to track all of those different changes that occur within a child's record during their time within early intervention. Here you see this grid has all of the referral dates. We have a primary open referral dated 12/17/25. Perhaps it came from a physician, and then maybe the health department called on the 15th of January and made another referral. We want to capture that information and enter that as an additional referral. If I want to go in and look at the referral information, what do you think I'm going to select? If I wanted to look at the referral information for the primary referral, what do you think I would select? Yes, I would select that edit button, and it would let me view that referral information that was previously entered. Now, what if I get another referral on this child? What do you think I'm going to select to enter that referral information? Add referral, exactly. That is exactly correct. So based on your user role, if you have edit privileges for the referral panel, you will see a gold box here where you can add a referral. And you will see that throughout the system that based on your user role, you will have capabilities to add certain things. You can add an evaluation, you can add eligibility, you can add an IFSP. And if that is something your user role can do, you will see this little gold box in all of those locations throughout the system. So, without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second, and I'm going to log into EI Hub. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. As we get closer to in-person trainings, you will receive an email. That email will give you the address for EI Hub. It will give you a username as well as a temporary. And I want to stress the word temporary because it is just that, very, very temporary and short-lived password. So it's very important when you get that email, number one, don't delete it. And number two, because that password is temporary, it's also somewhat time sensitive. So as soon as you get that email, we need you to use that address to log into the system, use your username, and then enter that temporary password, which will then allow you to set up what your permanent password is going to be. That is very important so that you have access to the training environment when we get ready for our in-person as well as virtual trainings. Also, as I mentioned, this is a training environment. Once you have access, you can go in and try to enter a referral, enter eligibility and evaluation and IFSP, and have some practice time before the system goes live. And I certainly encourage everyone to take advantage of that opportunity. So once I select sign in, where do you think it's going to take me? We talked about this when we first started our PowerPoint presentation. Ah, perfect. Yes, that's right. Yes, it's going to take me to my landing page. Exactly. Great job, everyone. Extra chocolate I'm bringing to Kansas. So here is our landing page. And you can see on my far right are the modules that have been assigned to me, the billing module and the case management module. The case management module is where you as a service coordinator will do most of your work. You also will more than likely be assigned the service logging module, which would be right here in this empty space if it were assigned to you. And to get into those modules, once again, the little mouse here, it turns from an arrow to a hand with an index finger pointing, and I can select my case management module, and it's going to take me to my user roles, and I have to decide which user role I want to do my work in when I enter case management. However, once I'm in and I'm on my particular homepage, I can easily change my user role. And I can do that by selecting this little drop down here at the top of the page. And you can see that all of my user roles will be displayed here. So if I want to change to my program administrative role, I can do that. And now I will see the children that are assigned to Russell Child Development Center here and my children assigned to caseload. We talked about in the PowerPoint that we have the child lookup, we have child add, and we have child reports. Child lookup, when I select this, gives me a mechanism to look up children. And I can do that by entering their first name and their last name. I can also look up children for a particular service coordinator if I want to see all the children on their caseload. I can search for children by county. So if I wanted to see all the children in my point of entry that are actually in Russell County, I can search that information and it will pull it into this grid. In this grid, there's lots of different information. I can change my view here and I can move this information to Excel. At the bottom of all of our grids, it will always give you a total of how many entries there are for the information you want. I mean, here it's easy, you see 3, but if there were 200 and I had selected 100 as my view, it would tell me that this was showing 100 of 290 entries or whatever the number was. Someone's asking about sorting by city. So to do that, you can see that's not one of the report filters here, but it is the information in the grid. So if I exported this to Excel, I would be able to do that here if it didn't show up in the city. Chances are this just information has not been entered. These are test children, most of these that we're seeing here. And when there's not information here, then basically it has not been entered into the system. You also have the capability to filter for different types of sets of children. For instance, if you want to look at all the children with the date of birth between August last year and today's date, you can do that. Children with no enrollments yet, basically children without any services. Children with active services within the selected period. Children with active evaluations, or children with initial IFSPs within a selected period. Also, if we did a search for a child when we get a new referral, when we enter the name here, it will search within our point of entry office for that child. But it's when we add the child and start entering their basic demographic information that it searches the entire state. Now, I'm in here and I'm looking up a kid, but now I want to go back to my home screen. I wonder how I could do that. Anyone have any suggestions? Kansas icon. Okay, home button. Okay, we did talk about that Kansas icon. And when we select that Kansas icon, I just want to show you this because we talked about that, and I think it's a very good point. When I select that Kansas Early Childhood Development Services icon, it takes me back to my landing page. So good paying attention when we were going through the slides. That was great. But I'm in my child lookup and I want to go back to my home screen, that screen where I had my dashboards and my children assigned to caseload. My home page, I can select by going home here, or these little things in this blue ribbon here, we call these breadcrumbs. And if I select home there, it will take me back to my home page. And someone's asking, are the landing page and the home page the same? No, they're not. Your landing page is where you determine which module you want to work and which user role you want to work in. Your home page is the page designed specifically for the user role that you select once you leave the landing page. We mentioned that I can change the view. So I'm in as my PCG super user role, and I can see that we have 4,461 children, but that's for the entire state.
Heights with everything.
If I want to change my view from 10 children to 100 children, I can select the 100, and it will increase the number of children I can see on this particular page to 100. And I can scroll all the way down and see
A
all
little
of those.
bird. My bird was fat. This is a skinny bird.
Okay, we have some more folks that
It's cute.
If you're talking
having
about
a nice-
birds, please mute yourself.
Yes. Now I've got this enlarged so that it's pretty easy for you to see, but I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because this is typically what it would look like when you're working, and you can see all of the columns in one view here. So I'm going to change my user role. And I'm going to search for, I know I have a child named Ryan. And I know that his name is Ryan Travis. So you can see that you can use this search box right here and search and make it a little bit easier sometimes to find individual children. I also talked about you can change the view of things that you see here in the grid. The default report will always be here. I have created something called Renee's report. Whoops, wrong one. Children assigned to caseload, where I only want to see this amount of information and not all the information that's available. I took out some of the particular columns. I do that by selecting this little gear. And all of my options appear on the drop down here. And I can select, I want my child's last name. I want their first name. Whoops, sorry. Last name, select the green box to move them over. I want their first name, select the green box to move them over. I want the county, select the green box to move them over. I want their IFSP end date, so I'm going to move that. You know what? I don't think I want the county. So I can select that county and the red box, and it will move it back and take it out of my report. I can then give this report a name, my IFSP end date report, and I can save that. Once I do that, that IFSP end date report is going to be there. And it's going to pull my children's first name and last name and their IFSP end date. And that's all the information I'll see in the grid when I set that report up for myself as a service coordinator. That's all I want to know. We talked about some of these dashboards are informational, and some of them are alert dashboards. Your IFSP alerts. You have different things that you can see. For instance, I can see children awaiting an IFSP 45-day timeline, and then I can search for those particular children and they will come into this grid. How would I get into that child's record? If I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, how would I get into the child's record? Edit child. Yes. Perfect. Absolutely. Perfect. Okay. We will talk about dashboards a little bit more when we have our in-person trainings. As I mentioned, the default report will always be there, and you can select that and see all the information that's available in this particular grid. I did want to show you, if you add a child that's already in the system, what that will look like. So I'm going to enter my child's name, their first name, their last name, their date, going to take this out. So remember, I said that if you forgot something, the system would let you know. So I'm going to select submit. And it tells me that sex must be entered. So I have to go back down and select that child's sex and submit again. So this is what happens once it does the little looks all across the state, and it finds a child has the same name, has the same birth date. It tells me that, look, it's a 63% chance that this is the same child that they have in Hoxie, Kansas. Do I want to cancel, continue, or transfer? If I select cancel, when I come to do your in-person trainings, what's going to be on the table? No one remembers? That's right. Absolutely. That's right. If I select cancel and do my due diligence, do my research, and make a phone call to whatever point of entry Hoxie, Kansas is in and say, hey, I have a referral for Leroy Abbott. Do you think it's the same Leroy Abbott that you have? And they say, oh yeah, yes, they moved, and I meant to transfer that case, but I forgot. See, just a little work, and you're not going to have to call your state office and now have them merge the records. So if you cancel, all is well, and you do not have a child's record entered. Okay, I'm going to go back to my home screen. And I'm going to go into a particular record and show you some things within that record. So once I select edit, that's pretty much like taking that hanging file folder out of the file cabinet. And once I do that, I have all of these different tabs that I can go into to see information about this particular child. What is some of the things I'm going to see if I look at the child info tab? What are some of the items that are going to be in my child info tab? Name, address, date of birth. Okay, good. Address, date of birth. Someone else? Medical information, race. Okay, sex. Okay. Okay, all good answers. When I select my child info tab, it loads the particular panels, the subfolders for child information. That includes my basic demographic information. It includes my referral information that houses all of that historical information. If I want to view that referral, I can select edit. If I get an additional referral for this child, I can add that. I can see the child's address, which in some cases might be different than the parent's address. I can also see in the time this child's been in the program, they've had 2 different addresses. And as I mentioned, I had someone ask me, why on earth would we enter a start date for an address? And the reason we do that is I've entered a start date of January 31st, 2026 for this address on Kansas Avenue. That child moved, and on February 5th, their new address is 517 Broadway Avenue. And when I did that and selected that as the primary address, it end dates this one. The system will automatically do that for you. It will end date that address. And now I'm building a historical record of all the addresses this child has while they're in early intervention. Now, this is where I talk about early intervention a little bit more than about EI Hub. How many times a child moves within their duration of early intervention is part of that child's story. It's also part of our story as early interventionists because it shows sometimes how hard we have to work to keep up with our children because they do move so many different times. And then when we're looking back at that echo data and we're like, oh my goodness, maybe we're not doing something right. Maybe we don't have the progress. And then we look back and say, oh my goodness, this child has moved 12 times in 2 years. What effect did that have on service delivery? So it's part of this child's story. Can the child be allowed to have 2 addresses? Yes. That second address would not be the primary. The primary address is what's considered that child's home for them. If the child has secondary languages, those can be added here. Child attributes, one of my favorite panels. I had the opportunity to work in Memphis for quite some time. And I was from a rural area, where everyone pretty much lived in a single home. But when I got to Memphis, I found lots of gated communities. And if you did not have the access code for the gate, you probably weren't going to get to do your home visit. So this is where you can enter information like this is direction, landmark, gate access code. When I select edit, I get a pop-up as the date that I enter this, and I can put access code for the gate is 9874. Maybe that child moves to another gated community and that access code changes. I can submit that and update it. Are there animals in the home? Sometimes that's very important to know. Maybe I have allergies. When was the child last seen? There's all kinds of different information that you can add here. Family service coordinator, your service coordinator, this is where you will add the person who has been assigned to be the service coordinator. If that assignment changes, when you enter the new person, it will end date the previous person. We have a family info tab. This is our family. They are the Travis family. I'm going to select edit here. This started on the date of their referral, which is January 31st. My family member panel. Sometimes it doesn't like it when you talk too much. It likes you to move pretty quickly. That is another feature of this system. If you have it open and you sit idle for too long, it will log you out. And the reason for that is that we don't want screens open with identifying information for anybody just to walk by and see. Okay. It doesn't want me to see the family member information today. So while it's doing its thing, as I mentioned, this little blue ribbon here has what we call breadcrumbs. And if I want to move from here, I want to close the file up and go back, I can select that child's name. And when I do that, it's going to take me back to, well, it should have. Like I said, it doesn't like it when you talk too much. And that's my specialty. Okay, there. When I select family member, I can see all the information that's been entered for this particular child and their family. Here we have their mother. Here we have their father. If I want to add someone else, I can select this gold button. And you can see that we can add a whole plethora of family members. And some of those family members might be a legal guardian. It might be a friend. Maybe there's some person living in the home that's not related. It's a friend. We even have an other selection here. We do have a start date for that as well, because people come and go, and maybe the person that's the friend, they leave. We don't want to lose that. We're not going to delete it, but we can end date it. We can add phone numbers for that person. We can add an address, secondary languages, and any family member notes there that we need to make. Our next tab is funding sources. This is where you will enter insurance information. You have a gold add button over here on the far right of the grid. This panel is very important because remember I talked about case management talks to service logging, talks to billing and claiming. All three modules are integrated. So when you're getting that Medicaid information and you get that card and you look at that and you put in here an 8 instead of a 0 for that Medicaid number, when your billing person for your point of entry gets ready to bill, it's going to get rejected because the number was incorrect. So it's very important to get this information on this particular panel as correct. There's an insurance verification as well, and that is just the date that you verified this insurance, and you would enter your name here as the person that verified it. Evaluation information. And we talked about there's some things that are going to be different in our system from the system that you have now. And one of the reasons for that is that we are moving to integrating everything that you do in case management into service logging and billing and claiming. Those components have to have certain information in order for billing to work correctly. So for evaluations, if your point of entry is going to bill for that, we will need to enter what we call a service authorization. It's not something like what you're accustomed to where you get authorization from a physician or you get authorization from an insurance company, that pre-authorization. This is authorization within the case management system, basically from your point of entry office, saying they're authorizing this evaluation. And once we enter this, once again, it doesn't like it when I talk too long. Okay, so I'm going to change my user role because super user, it's having to search a lot more kids. I'm going to narrow it down, make it work a little bit faster. Okay, so this evaluation information panel is where we will enter what we call a service authorization. This information will move to service logging. And when that evaluator does the evaluation, this information will be there. and it will allow them to log the service. And then when they log the service, this authorization will also be in billing and claiming and allow the service to be billed to Medicaid. So this is a change, I know, and it's one that we will talk about over and over and over again so that everyone is clear on how and why we have to have this for billing to be successful. So here we have our pay source. We have one option. When you see a binocular icon, you can select that, and it will let you select the program typically. Try service type. I'm going to put in my multidisciplinary evaluation. Drop down's not showing up here. We don't have an IFSP at this part of the child's journey in early intervention. This is for their eligibility. So whatever dates you want to allow for that, maybe you're going to give them 30 days because you got to write your IFSP in 40 days. Maybe you're going to give them 40 days. Whatever works for you will work in the system. So we're going to put the evaluation date on the 12th. Our agency, when you see a magnifying glass over here, is what we call a type ahead. Once again, some user roles can do things in training and some can't. Dates of evaluation from, dates of evaluation to. Our agency is what we call a type ahead. All the agencies that are approved to provide that particular service will appear, and I can select the agency that's going to do the evaluation. I can select the location, and we need to make this service authorization active. It's currently inactive. When I change it to active and I select submit, what's going to happen is that we're going to have an authorization number that appears here in this particular field. It saved our changes. And you can now see that there is an authorization number. That authorization number is very important in billing and claiming. That's the number they will bill against. Now, what if this child is medically fragile and they're in and out, in and out, in and out of the hospital? We don't want to exit them just because of that. And we're not able to complete that evaluation by March 12th. If I go to bill and I did the evaluation on March 15th, billing is going to be rejected. So it's very important to give yourself plenty of time to get things completed. But in the event that you need to change your end date and that evaluation didn't happen until the 16th, you can change that date and submit again. And it will allow you to extend the date of your evaluation. So be always mindful of that. Your end dates are very important. I know this is something you haven't had to do in the past, and it's going to be probably the largest learning curve as we learn more about this new system. Evaluator assignment. There has to be someone assigned to do the evaluation for billing to be successful. You can assign up to 3 different evaluators. We have the binoculars. This information will be preloaded into the system. You will not have to type in evaluators' names. You can simply click on the binocular, and the therapists that are approved to provide evaluations will be in the drop-down. I'm going to select Bryce and save. I also want to assign a secondary evaluator, and you'll notice that my therapist selection now reduces to 2 because I've already selected Bryce. Now I'm going to select Ruth. And now I want to assign my tertiary, that 3rd person. And we're only going to have 1 more person here that we can select because there's 3 people with Russell Child Development that are entered into the system as being available to do evaluations. Now, because these people are entered, when billing takes place, we have a therapist assignment, it will be successful. We have an authorization number, we have a service, and we have therapists that have been assigned to provide that service. How are we doing with questions, Megan or Courtney?
We have quite a few questions regarding authorizations if an evaluation does not occur, but an authorization number is generated. So it's a lot having to do with timelines.
Okay, all right. So if that evaluation does not occur, billing will not take place, and it's not an issue. If you ever did a screening, I know in conversation that it seems most likely that your children do not get a screening and simply go to the developmental assessment. But if for some reason a child was going to get a screening, that information would be entered here in this screening tab for that to happen. And then you can put in your screening results. But on your service authorization, it would have been for a screening and not for a multidisciplinary evaluation. You need to be very specific that that's what your service authorization was for. It was for a screening. Yes, you do need service authorizations for screenings as well if you're going to bill for those. Yes. Yep. Good questions. The developmental assessment, I know that you have a document called My Child's Story, and that is where you're going to enter your developmental evaluation. But we do have things that are available in our system to enter regarding that evaluation. For instance, the parent's consent, the date that consent was given, the location of the evaluation, was a bilingual evaluation performed, what was the bilingual language, and then if you needed to upload that developmental assessment or that consent, that could be completed here. And then information regarding the evaluation assessment could also be entered here if you chose to do that. And you simply select the Add Evaluation Assessment, select your domain, the date, the assessment evaluator, and here's where you see that when I talked about once you enter information once, you don't have to keep entering it if it's needed later in the system. So here, for instance, I selected 3 different people to be assigned evaluators. Then when I get to the part where I'm entering my assessment information, I can select which evaluator did this part of the evaluation. You know, maybe one of those folks is a speech language pathologist and they're the person that did the communication. You know, maybe they went out and did a PLS 3, and I would enter that here. You have your test scores and all of this information, the evaluation method, their instrument is here. But like I said, all that is strictly up to you and your point of entry, the state, whatever. So once that evaluation service authorization has been entered, there are additional panels where information can be entered. For you, the birth medical history panel is the panel that is going to show up in your IFSP. So when you get ready to print your IFSP document, information here has been what we call mapped to your IFSP. For instance, you know, here we have vision and hearing information, and that's on your IFSP. It's not anything you're going to have to enter again. The system will pull it from here into your document. Someone's asking scores for different developmental domains looks like a required field. It is if you choose to use this, but once again, you document your developmental information on your My Child Story. So that's where you would document your information. You do not have to use our system for that. That's strictly up to you. There's other panels here that some of these are read-only panels, like the medical diagnostics code summary. If you've entered a diagnosis code in the medical record here, it would show up here in the summary. This is, like I said, it's read-only. It pulls information here so that at a glance, I can see all the different diagnoses that a child might possibly have. Our next panel is eligibility. I'm going to have to switch roles again. So the user role that I was in did not have the edit privilege in the training environment to add eligibility. So I changed my role. Once again, we talked about that above the grids, if you do have edit privileges, you will see the gold box. And I can select add eligibility. Why did it do that? Having a mind of its own. I think it needs some chocolate this afternoon. So here, you're going to select the type of eligibility this is. Is it the initial or is this your annual reassessment? And you're going to put in a determination date. You're going to select an eligibility outcome. And you will need to put in a developmental delay summary. So I might say this child had a 40% delay in communication and had a 25% delay in cognitive area. Now, I haven't tested to see if it will let me save it without this eligibility status, but there's not an asterisk there, and I do have an eligibility outcome of developmental delay, so I'm going to submit. Yeah, eligibility status is required. I thought that it was. And here your only options are not eligible or eligible. Now, one thing in the system, you cannot have an eligibility determination date that is the same date as your referral. It will not allow you to do that. There is logic in the system to prevent that from happening. So if I have a child that was referred today, February 5th, and I put in my determination date as February 5th, I would receive an error message saying that eligibility cannot be the same date as referral. So once my eligibility is determined, go to my IFSP tab, add my IFSP. While I'm right here, this is your Child and Family Outcomes tab, and you will be entering your entrance data here when you do your initial IFSP. And this is the tab for that. You have an add option here. And is this a current, initial, or active IFSP? Who it was submitted by will auto-populate based on how you're logged in. You'll have your information source, your COSIF type, the date it was entered. And then once you submit that, it will take you to your next screen where you will look at your positive social emotional skills, your acquiring and using knowledge skills, and your appropriate action to meet needs. But I really want to spend as much time as possible on the IFSP. We'll talk about this more in person trainings. So here we have a grid. So every IFSP this child has while they are in early intervention will be able to be seen here in this grid. So if this child has an initial, they have a review, then they have that annual IFSP, and then they have another review. All of those IFSPs would be seen here in this particular grid. You would have an action column over here, and unless that IFSP has closed, you would be able to copy an IFSP and create your next one if you wanted to do that, or you can always select add IFSP and start over fresh. It's totally up to you. When I select my add IFSP, it takes me to my IFSP information panel. And when I enter information here, this basically is creating my IFSP itself. I can't move down to any of the other panels until I have completed my IFSP information. So when I select my initial, this IFSP is going to stay in draft status while I'm working on it. So we don't need to touch that. We can't even touch that. We're going to enter our IFSP start date as well as our IFSP end date. And one of the neat features about our calendar is if I select February 26, it's going to show me all the months of 2026. But I want my IFSP for a year, so I can go to the arrow beside 2026, and I'm going to see all the months in 2027. And I would be able to select an end date. And now I'm wondering what the birth date of my child is to see if it's going to let me save this. It will be an in-person meeting. You have options of in writing or by conference call. And once you select submit, that is what has started your IFSP. At that point, you can begin entering information into any of the panels. You do not have to go in any particular order. So maybe if I were going to use the level of development panel that we have rather than my child's story, I could go here and enter information, or I can go ahead and go down to my child's story and begin entering my information here. Because I have my evaluation and assessment information, but I'm not going to have my IFSP meeting for another week. And I am not a procrastinator. So actually I am, but you're probably not. And you can go ahead and begin entering your evaluation and assessment information here. And I believe this looks just like what you are used to with my child's story. You have your summary of development within family routines and activities. Within each of the routines and activities of the day, address the following questions. I believe that these are items that you are familiar with and what you currently use in the state of Kansas. Now I've entered this, and it's going to be time for the IFSP meeting. Here we have the IFSP team. We see the gold bar above the grid, just like we do throughout the system. We need a primary provider at our IFSP meeting. That participant role, service coordinator. And if you remember, I said once that service coordinator has been assigned, we're not going to have to retype their name again. If it's needed in the system at any other location, it will be here in a drop down. And in fact, you cannot type in the name of a service coordinator or the family. It has to be in the record and be in these drop downs. It is not an option to be able to type in the name of the service coordinator or a family member. And one of the reasons for that goes back to billing. We have to make sure that that information is entered, and that is one of the ways to do that. And once I select her name, it puts in her name, her phone number, her email, and we can submit. And this is one of the things with migrated data into the training environment. Because her email has been redacted, I would need to go into that service coordinator's profile and put in her actual email here, and get that changed. But that's just one of the things you will see in the training environment, not the production environment. If I were able to save her name or Deb's name, when I selected IFSP team, her name would be here in the grid. It makes you have a primary provider, so it will not let you move to adding a family member until you have that primary provider for your IFSP team, because IFSP teams have to have the service coordinator, your primary provider, and a family member.
Renee,
Your
there's a quick question
Wasn't expecting it. Yes.
about uploading documents into the My Child Story panel. Is there a way to upload a document there, or would they have to go through the evaluation panel?
They can upload a document into the document tab in this system, but there's not a way to upload that into the My Child Story. You can upload it into an IFSP folder in the Documents tab, but you would not be able to upload it. So we would just need to copy and paste. Yes. Yes, you go copy and paste from your RBI. Yes. Yep. Your IFSP meeting. The required fields for this are your IFSP meeting date and the time. Why is the time not showing up here? It usually has 1 a.m. or p.m., but okay. And we're going to select p.m. and submit. Those are the only two required fields regarding your IFSP meeting. Your family strengths, priorities, concerns, and resources. If you utilize this, it does require parental consent. And in our system, concerns and priorities are two separate areas. So, like when you're doing your RBI and you start out that conversation with asking the family, what are your main concerns, or what is your understanding of why your child's in early intervention? They're going to give you their concerns, but then as you do your RBI and you come up with your goals, and those become those priorities for what the family really wants to work on. So they can be separated out in that manner if you choose to use this panel and do that. But I think that y'all are used to having your concerns and your priorities is all one area. You have your family resources, identified family child needs. In these particular areas, you can choose more than one option. You can choose as many as the family is receiving. And enter that information there. Ongoing evaluations. We can add evaluations, if it's decided at an IFSP team meeting, you can add those evaluations here. Or if a child's going to get a physical therapy evaluation and it's outside of that IFSP meeting, we have discussed that you can just go back to your evaluations tab and add that physical therapy evaluation here. The main thing is that if a physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy evaluation is going to be provided, we do have to have a service authorization for that service. So make sure that you're getting those completed. You can see that because I've started this draft IFSP, I can leave working on that IFSP and go to another panel or another tab within that child's record and come back to my IFSP. I'm not going to lose any information that I've entered so far. It's always going to save every time I select submit for one of the IFSP panels. So it's not like I have a constant running screen with all of this information and it's only going to submit and save once I've entered everything. It will allow me to enter information in spurts. If I get a phone call that I need to get to the school quickly because my child fell off the slide, I'm not going to lose information. As soon as I hit submit on this panel, that information is saved. Outcomes, you can add those here. You have outcome type. Is it a child outcome? Is it a family? If it is migrating in from your old system to our system, it will say migrated data. You can give your outcome a whatever that outcome is. Your outcome will have a start date that will auto-populate to be the same date as the start date of your IFSP. Then the other required field is what's happening now related to this outcome. And you can just put whatever information is needed there. And if this is a new outcome, you would select new outcome for your progress rating. And then if you have your child outcome areas here that this is going to have an effect on, acquiring and using knowledge and skills, taking action to meet needs. We're working on him feeding himself. It might be more than one. It might be acquiring and using knowledge and skills. And then when we review this outcome, we have a progress rating, outcome edited, outcome to be continued, outcome achieved, discontinued, or a completely new outcome, which is what we're entering currently. And was the outcome met? And what was that completed date? And the progress that's been seen. Our IFSP services. Once again, this is where we're entering a service authorization so that we can bill for these particular services. We have the gold bar, just like we see above all the other grids within the child's record. And when we select that, we get this. No, we should not get this. Try it one more time. So Jessica, that would be something good to make a note of, or Zane. Probably.
Will do.
All right, I'm going to see if it will let me go into the services tab. Don't think that it'll let me add anything other than service coordination, but I can at least show them what the panels look like. Try it one more time in my super user role. Okay, it's going to play nice now. So when you add a service, there are certain things that service logging and billing and claiming require. We have to enter our service information. That includes our pay source, what program it is that we're providing, and for Kansas, it's always going to be this direct child service. And then our service type is a drop down with all of the different options. And maybe we're going to have occupational therapy. And here, we don't need to make our service active until we have completed all of our other panels. Because once we have an authorization number, we cannot change the information for our service delivery, our service details, or our company assignment and service location. That authorization number is tied to all of those requirements for that service. So once we make it active and have that number, it's not going to allow us to make any changes here. So we want to make sure that we select our service delivery. Whoops, yes, I do. And you can submit that information without making it active. I'm going to select my service delivery. And we have the occupational therapy. It has the same start and end date as our IFSP. Here with the IFSP start date. If we want to make the start date for this service a week later, we can do that. I can move it to February 12th and it have then the same end date for 6 months out, which is when we're going to review this IFSP. And we're going to have that review around August 5th. My intensity is going to be that this service is provided individually. We're going to select our frequency based on how many times we're going to allow the occupational therapy service to be in a 6-month period. Maybe we want them to see the child 12 times in that 6-month period. So it would set our frequency at 12. Then the length of that visit is going to be an hour. If you want to tie that particular service to one of your outcomes, it would be here, a child outcome that we have in the system. And submit. So I have a question that says, are we needing to decide how we're covering the cost for each individual service on each child? No, you will not have to do that. Currently, you are just going to enter. You only have one choice for the pay source. And then when it moves to service logging and billing and claiming is when that child's funding sources are going to be picked up, and it will automatically determine that it's going to be billed to Medicaid or whatever. I think Medicaid is probably the only option at this point, but if that child has Medicaid, it will be billed to Medicaid. Our service details, if you want to allow makeup visits, you would select this little check mark here and determine how many makeup visits you're going to allow within a 6-month period. And then also, do you want to allow co-visits? Maybe you have the speech pathologist also going out and you want to allow a co-visit, and you can select who that co-visit could be with your speech language pathologist. Your quantity, I'm going to allow 6 of those in a 6-month period and submit. Our company assignment, pretty much going to be your point of entry. That is a type ahead. So I can just enter the RU and have Russell Child Development. My service location, and I select home, because that child's home address has been added in the system, it will auto-populate here. This is needed for billing, so we always want to make sure we have that address for that child's home in the system. And then for OSEP recording purposes, we need to know, is this child being served in a natural environment? Yes. Now, if I select no, then I get some additional information I have to enter regarding why it's not being provided in a natural environment and any plans to move that service to a natural environment. And I can submit. Therapist assignment. Once again, we have the gold box. We can add that information. Can add my therapist. If an occupational therapist has been associated with Russell Child Development, they will be in this drop down, as well as the therapist profession. If For instance, you have a speech language therapist who's working on getting their C's, and they have a clinical supervisor. You would be able to select that person here as the clinical supervisor. So now that I have all of my information about the service entered, pick the wrong breadcrumb there. You will see that information is in the grid. I also see there's no authorization number and that my service status is inactive. So that's kind of a cue to me. Oh, wait a minute. I need to go back in and make this service active. And I do that by changing my enrollment status to active and submitting. And once I submit, what's that going to do? What am I going to see on this particular panel once I make it active? Authorization number. Man, y'all are going to put me out of a job. You're right. There it is. There is our authorization number once we make that service active. So two things. When you enter your service information, make sure before you make the service active, you also complete your service delivery, your service details, your company assignment, service location, therapist assignment, if you know that. The therapist assignment is one of the panels that can be selected later. It will allow therapists to be changed as long as the agency, the point of entry, is still the same. If the point of entry changes or that agency providing the service, whatever, changes, then you would need to enter a new service authorization. But as long as it's the same, as long as the money's going to the same place for that service, you do not have to enter a new one, and you can edit the therapist assignment at any time. Then once you have entered all that information, it's very important, come back, change your enrollment status to active, because that's what's going to give you your authorization number, and that's what's going to allow successful billing.
Renee, I'm sorry to interrupt. However, we are at 3:00, so I just want to tell people that if they need to leave,
Yes.
please do so. Take care of yourselves. We're going to hang out, and I don't know if Renee, you continue. Past.
We might just talk a little bit about just the FSP parent agreement real quick. That once you've completed all of your information here in these panels and go back to your IFSP information panel, you can submit your IFSP. And then once it is submitted, and you go to that IFSP parent agreement, you can enter whether the parent gives their consent or not. You can select that you have the signature of the parent, the legal guardian, and if there's more than one parent, you can select both of those. If you want to go ahead and generate your draft IFSP document, you can do that. You can upload your signature page and submit that information. Once you have submitted that information, assuming in a different role, I would in the service coordinator role, I would have the capability then, or the program administrator role, to finalize this IFSP document. And then you can, in the grid, once it is finalized, you would have the action here where you could print that IFSP. So, okay, that got us through quite a bit and a little bit of a sneak peek into the system. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for all your questions. I hope that my counterparts were able to provide some good answers for those questions. And if we have questions that we feel like we could not answer, we will work on getting answers and providing those when we get to our in-person trainings. So I want to thank you very, very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Renee. We really appreciate you coming and doing this overview with us.
Yes.
Again, we will also be sharing the chat questions, so we will have an opportunity to look through those and provide input as well. Again, this is just the start. There's lots of opportunities for discussion. We will have time with your TAs. So let's make sure that we get all your questions answered in the next few months as we do this. Really quick, there will be a certificate that is provided to your program coordinator, and those people who have attended the various training sessions, that program coordinator is responsible to have kept names and will be providing that to you. That should happen in the next few weeks. And I think I'll just say again, we will hang out if you would like, if there's anything else. But other than that, I think we need to wrap it up for people's time. So thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Look forward to meeting you all in March.
Renee, if you don't mind stopping your share.
Barbara, will you stop the recording?
Yes, thank you.